I'm putting all my faith in your technical ability here, Matt.
Let me just make sure I'm getting a nice waveform. Oh, look at that waveform.
And I'll try down the bottom. There we go. I've got the bass. There we go. Nice. We're like the Bee Gees harmonising now.
I have brought Tim to the south of England on a little road trip, and we have come to pay a visit to a man named Matt Parker. And anyone who watches my number file videos will be very familiar with Matt. He is a real mainstay and superstar of the channel. He's a math dude, a former math teacher. He's now a YouTube superstar, podcaster, live performer, writer.
That's a good job description, though.
What would we put on your gravestone, Matt? What's the top line?
Knowing my luck, it would be the Parker Square. But I don't know. Yeah. Maths communicator is like the catch-all.
Yeah.
I feel like you never stop being a teacher. So part of me still feels like deep down I'm a maths teacher. When immigration asks going into countries, I say maths teacher.
Okay.
Or people ask, if I'm meeting a new person who has no idea what I do, and I'm at a party or somewhere, I'll be like, oh, I'm a maths teacher.
And maths teacher's not going to flag up anything with immigration authorities either.
Exactly.
They're going to leave you alone.
It's nice and simple. Everyone knows what it is. I did consider flipping to say author, but I feel like there's more follow-on questions if you say author.
That could open the can of worms.
Yeah.
Do you still use the term stand-up mathematician?
I do, yes.
Right.
I feel like that gets across the essence of what I'm trying to do. Slightly irreverent, enjoy in a recreational mathematics, but in hopefully a mildly entertaining manner.
Bit of comedy in there.
Bit of comedy. You don't want too much comedy because obviously comedy is subjective. And the moment you start adding comedy, you lose some of your audience.
It's also like, tell us a joke. I find this hard, Tim, with the Unmade podcast, when I had to categorize that under the categories of like, what kind of podcast is this? I'm always really reluctant to call it a comedy podcast because then it's like, I think I'm pretty funny, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, Matt and I have just been recording some number file videos. Tim has been sitting in the corner
Judging?
watching, sitting on his phone, really.
Yeah.
What was it like spectating, Tim?
I know there are many sort of Matt and Brady maths fans that would pay good money to do what I did this morning, which is to sit in the corner and watch you record. Yeah, while I was like texting my family. But
Yeah.
You're looking out the window.
gosh, it sounded impressive though. Very impressive.
I wouldn't say Tim was totally engaged with the mathematics, but he did say, I enjoyed the energy.
You did turn around to check a few things with me from time to time, did you?
Well, at the end, I turned around to Tim and said, did you see that? It was really cool. And then I wanted to re-explain it, which is always a sign of a good number file video, is that I can't wait to tell other people about it. I couldn't even wait to say, come and look at this, Tim. I want you to see what we just did. So anyway, that's a video for another day. Let me get into why we're here. The real reason is Matt has a new book out.
Yes, that's right.
and like anyone with a book,
I mean, yes.
I could ask Matt 1,000 times to be on a podcast and he might say no. He might say yes. But if he's got a book out, I know he's going to say yes because he wants people to buy the book. And so they should. So Matt, we are going to let you plug your book, but not yet.
Fair enough.
You have to earn the right to tell people about your book by coming up with ideas for a podcast. It's what we do here on the Unmade podcast. So
I'm happy to earn my right.
Earn the right. So shortly we're going to ask for some podcast ideas and then Tim and I will tear them to pieces.
Oh no, hang on a second. I've as I've become acquainted with Matt's work, I've been very impressed. And listening to him this morning go through maths, I've been very impressed. I feel like of all the guests that we've had, I have high expectations of what we're going to get here.
That was me on my home turf.
Right.
Like judging me talking about maths is giving me the best possible light and rolling start.
All right. Well,
so
we will come to your idea shortly. It's traditional that we will throw an idea out there first just to help you warm up, give you an idea how things work. Yeah. And last night I came up with an idea for a podcast that I think you will like because I'm going to give you another free hit at plugging your book.
Oh my goodness.
And I think Tim will like because Tim is much more of a book reader than me. He's quite a bookish guy, so he likes anything to do with books. Because my idea for a podcast is to do with books. And I haven't given it a good name yet. So let's call it Untitled for now, which may yet be its name.
Not a bad title.
All right, Untitled. And the idea of this podcast is you have two hosts. So hypothetically, Tim and I are the hosts. There may be a third host. We'll come to that in a minute. But two hosts and then a guest. Matt, you are playing the role of the guest.
Got it.
And the idea of this podcast is the guest has written a book, has just had a book published and wants to promote their book, which is a pretty common
describing most podcasts right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of meta.
Yeah. Okay. But in this podcast, neither of the hosts, so Tim and I, wouldn't know the author, wouldn't know what the book is, wouldn't know what it's about. You have to come in pretty cold, and you tell the hosts the title of your book, and then they will start asking questions and discussing and try and figure out what the book is about. So it will start with them saying, oh, well, I think a book called that would probably be about this. It sounds like it'd be about that. But let's find out more about you, Matt. What did you do? And you would tell us, I was a teacher in Perth. And, a teacher. Oh, so it might be educational. Oh, it might be a book. Oh, what else? Tell us. What did you teach? Oh, you taught math. Oh, where do you live? And things like that. So as you unpick the person, you get closer and closer to figuring out what the book is about.
Are you competing between yourselves to work out what it's about, or as a team are you solving the mystery?
I don't think you have like a winner as such, and there are no points. But I think there may, over time, a rivalry may exist between the hosts. You know, who's usually better at figuring it out, who usually goes off piste more, things like that. I mentioned the possibility of a third host. You could have a third person involved, like off to the side, who has actually read the book, and at the end they come in and give you a bit of a review and tell you, well, actually, Tim, you were right. That is what the book's about. I've just read it, and this is what I thought of it. But you're also interviewing the author, and who better to tell you what the book is about?
So it's sort of it sort of has the same sort of narrative flow. It's a bit like a book where you start not knowing anything. You're looking at the cover, judging it. You slowly make your way in. Yeah. And I know there are different kinds of readers. Some like to know what's going to happen in the book. They read reviews about a book and they want to know it's good, generally what it's about, before they read it. I also have another friend of mine who I was in a book club with, and he's like, don't tell me anything. I don't want to know anything. I just start fresh. I didn't even know the genre. And then he goes into this is a novel like that. It unfolds page by page.
First, before we go further, would you like my idea?
It's good.
I feel like we need to test it, or I don't. Conceptually, sure.
Okay,
it's fine. It's a solid Brady idea.
Okay, we can't.
That's saying a lot while saying little.
We can't properly test it with Matt because we know too much about Matt. We know everything. But the reason I did think of this idea was, and this is a rare compliment I will give Matt, is because I think your new book has an excellent title.
Oh, thank you.
I think it was very clever.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to tell people what your new book is called?
It is called Love Triangle.
All right. Now, we can't play my game on my podcast here because we already know too much about you. But Tim...
It's sitting in front of me.
And there is. But Tim, what would you guess this book is about? Like, what do you think is going to be in this book? Obviously, you have some idea, but...
I do have some idea. I mean, you've got the maths background, so it's going to be something, it's a pun on love triangle, on shapes, triangles, geometry generally, or something like that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Is the book about triangles?
It's about triangles.
Right.
Yeah. I wanted to write a book about trigonometry.
Yeah.
Because I feel like things like Pythagoras and trigonometry are like the maths that most people were forced to learn at school. So you probably have experiences of learning Pythagoras.
Oh, flashbacks all the time.
And I don't want to, again, Tim, we met today. It's been a wonderful day. I don't want to judge you too much, but that may have been the most advanced maths you had to learn.
Maybe business maths a little bit more, money, kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. But then later on, you might, have to learn functional maths for your job or career or something else, or survival. But I think a lot of people look back on trigonometry and Pythagoras and triangles as like that pointless maths they were forced to learn.
Yeah.
And it becomes like, it's the mascot of...
Stuff I don't use.
I
feel that way. This is a terrible thing to admit as the person who makes number file, but you know I'm not a mathematician and I know surprisingly little about mathematics. I don't really know what sine and cos and tan are.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Oh, yeah, I remember them.
That's trigonometry.
Wow, we had the expensive calculator with them up the top.
Yes. They were expensive and still are. You
So
think
is
the
that
prices would have tumbled, but no.
So how are you doing this in a book? How are you? Oh, look, I'm letting you plug your book already. Look at that. How good
I feel like this.
Yeah. So how do
guilty.
you... Are there lots of pictures in your book?
There's some pictures, but it's... Because obviously I could draw quite heavily from where triangles and geometry and trigonometry are used in everyday life. So it's probably a combination of stories about how this stuff is very practical and useful in the real world because people say this is pointless. Why'd I have to learn it? And I'm trying to point out there are some reasons why we want to know these things. But then also it's me enjoying maths recreationally and talking about my adventures with triangles and the like.
All
And
right.
that's trying to show that these things can be fun and enjoyable. Being forced to learn it when you're a teenager was not the optimal time to
Okay.
maybe meet Sine, Cos, and their friends.
But it's not a textbook, is it?
No,
What makes it not a textbook?
you won't learn much.
Right. It's more,
It's more trigonometry PR
Right.
than it is trigonometry textbook. My hope is some people will just read it and at the end be like, oh, okay, triangles are very useful and trigonometry is important. But other people might then be motivated to pick up a textbook or do some further learning or, pay more attention in their education if they're a younger person.
We will come back to plugging Matt's book at the end. I think he's getting way too much promotion
I'm
time.
trying to
I
dial
think
it
that
back.
horse is bolted,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I know, the horse is bolted. There is a link to Matt's book in the description, by the way, if you want to buy it and stuff like that. And we'll give him a little plug at the end as well. But let's come back to my idea for just a minute. How important is the title of a book?
I think it's very important.
Because I feel like it is too, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of titles of books they don't really tell you much about what's in the book.
No.
And look at what are some, we were talking about the book On Chesil Beach yesterday or the day before. And I thought it's a successful book, but that title wouldn't make me buy the book.
I think there's a difference between fiction and non-fiction here, though.
Right.
Like a book that's I'm going to look for something in it, how to or something. That's a little bit different to something that needs to be somewhat vague and abstract for a novel, but have a sense of gravitas or a gesture to it or something like that.
What are you trying to do? Like, you've had a few books now, Matt, and I think the thing that they have in common, the titles have in common, is there's usually you're trying to be funny. There's usually a sense of playfulness and a pun,
that's me.
humble pie and things like that. What are you trying to achieve with the titles of your books?
That's a great question. And the question is, how does the title of a book differ from, let's say, the title of a YouTube video?
Yep.
Because I think they're trying to achieve similar things, but I think a book title has to be a lot shorter.
Yes.
What's also interesting about it is the author doesn't get to choose the title necessarily. My domain is everything inside the book.
Yeah.
So my publishers, Penguin Random House, lovely people. Technically, I have final say on anything inside the book, and
Yeah.
they have final say on anything outside the book. So the cover design, the title, the subtitle, all of that is Penguin's domain.
Yeah.
Now, we obviously have a wonderful relationship, and we go back and forth. And they've never done anything that I wasn't happy with. So
Yeah.
they're great. But they did change the title of my second book. Humble Pie wasn't originally called Humble Pie.
No. Huh?
It was called The Wrong Book.
Right.
And I had a bunch of puns and ridiculous things about it being called The Wrong Book.
Right.
And then their marketing people were like, meh, we don't think that conveys what the book's about.
Yep.
And we don't think it's it's going to stand out as a book. So they said that's a bad book title. Very funny, but not a good title. So they then came back to me and said, we don't want to use The Wrong Book. Can you come up with some other suggestions?
Did you come up with Humble Pie?
I did, yeah. So I then went away and had a good think about it and came back with some other suggestions.
How did you feel, though, when the title that you'd given it and you'd become attached to, you were told, not good enough? Like, do you get stroppy? Do you sulk? Did you agree? Like,
Your instinct is all of those things, to be upset. And your instinct is to justify it. To
Yeah.
go, well, here's why I think this is great. This is why I picked it, etc. And that's a very common instinct. And you get this a lot so if you're doing performance, like stand-up, or any kind of public speaking communication, proper, candid, useful feedback is like the scarce resource. And being able to take on that feedback is a very important skill. And your instinct is, when someone tells you what you did wrong and how you should do it, your instinct is to justify it and go, oh, no, I want to do it this way. But what you're doing is only going to get better by having someone giving you that feedback. And I learned this teaching. Teaching, your first year of teaching or your teacher training is brutal, because 4 times a day, you get sat down and told all the things you just did wrong in the last hour,
Yes.
and then repeat. And it's so emotionally draining. But that's how you get better at these things. And so one of the reasons why I love publishing with a publisher as opposed to self-publishing, because I could write a book and publish it myself. But my editors and my publishers and everyone who works at Penguin, their sole goal is not to make me feel good about myself. Their goal is to write a book which is good and people will want to buy and read. And And in that regard, they align with my interest in writing a book that's going to be good at promoting mathematics. And so the reason why I love going through a publisher is I just get constant notes and feedback from my editor. So by the time the book was written, by the time they come back to me and say, we don't like the title, I've already gone through 18 months of constant notes and changes and feedback. And I'm constantly reminding myself, like, this is the point of doing it this way, is to get this feedback. And they were right. I mean, they forced me to go away, and Humble Pie is a much better title. And I was very pleased when I came up with it. So, you know, they were spot on.
I'm sure Tim's looking at me thinking, Brady could not write a book. I don't think I could handle that level of constant criticism.
No, you have to. I've done this. I've published a book, and it's the same deal. And I look back now, and with worshipful reverence towards my editors, I'm so grateful for how good they make my book read. I say sound because it was an audio book in particular that sounds so impressive, and it's like, gosh, that's me. The other thing is, the title for a book is a bit like, it's like an analog clickbait, isn't it? You go into a bookshelf and you want to pick it up. I was horrified, partly because you spend so long with the manuscript, and I had a really cool title, which was named after an REM song. And so it meant so much to me. What was the
original title?
The original title was called Walk Unafraid, and it was a book about surviving trauma from childhood. And so I lived with that all the way through. And then they came with, a guidebook for so-and-so. And I'm like, what? No. Yeah. And I felt visceral about it. In the end, I got to keep my title as like one of the chapter titles. And we ended up with something that was better and that worked. Yeah. Gosh, that level of control, Brady, though, I don't know if you could.
No, it's not. Here's the $1 million question then. Was Love Triangle your first choice?
It was.
You kept your first choice this time.
First choice. I'm now 2 from 3.
Okay.
So Things to Make and Do in the Fourth Dimension, my first book, that was the working title the whole time. And Love Triangle, that was the working title the whole time.
Is this the time for us to finally reveal what our first title for the Unmade podcast was?
Oh.
We have done it on in the request room, but we haven't done it here on the main show.
Ooh. Yeah, we went so far as to get a logo made up.
Oh, I'm honored.
We
honored
did.
To be here for this.
Yeah. For a little while, it was called No Idea. And there was a deer, like a stag.
like a stag's head.
And you changed?
I think, yeah. Having no idea, kind of. I still don't think that was a terrible title. But
was it a stag with an eye missing or something like that?
Oh yes, I think it might have had like crosses where the eyes were. Or something.
Nice.
Oh, really? I missed that.
There were brilliant. We should have done that. It went too late to go back.
It went through several incarnations, but I don't think we ditched it because we didn't like it. I think we ditched it for like practical reasons, maybe URLs that were available and things like that. Yeah. But
we also like the idea of say on the tin what's in the tin. You know what I mean? Something.
Yeah, Unmade is a really good title for it.
And it's got podcast in it, so you can say this is what it is.
Yeah.
Works.
Are there any books that you think have been more successful than they would have been because they've got a great title? Or are there books that are classics that you think have got rubbish titles but became successul anyway? Any of your favourite books that you look at and think, I love that book, but the title's a bit rubbish?
I always think One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a strange title.
Yeah, it's like To Kill a Mockingbird.
That's the other one too, yeah. I remember reading something about the novel The Great Gatsby, and there were different iterations, and then it came down to just simple. It's like simple, The Great Gatsby, and it works. And I think there's something profound about simplicity. You're looking for that, for it to be tight. But
it's got rhythm. Yeah.
But if like those authors came onto my podcast, like, hey, my book's called The Great Gatsby or my book's called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, like you'd have no chance.
You have no idea what's going on.
No. Yeah. My dream job would be having bands come and ask me to name their albums. Like, have a listen to this. What should it be called? And pulling it all together and naming it.
You could be a naming consultant.
Oh, that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Anyway, there was my podcast idea. Got way too much promotion for Matt's book in way too early in the podcast.
I'm done. I'm going to leave right now.
Yeah, you could leave now.
I don't have to deliver anything.
No, but will you give us a couple of ideas? Will you throw us a bone?
Absolutely.
What's your first idea for a podcast?
So, I asked my wife, Lucy. I said, oh, hey, I'm doing Unmade. And they're going to talk about this podcast I want to make that I haven't made yet.
Did you say, like, when you said I'm doing Unmade, is that like, I'm going on the Late Show or something? Or was there?
In our house. No, I had to explain what that was.
Oh, okay, right.
So,
Brady who?
I was like, Brady. Him and his mate Tim have this podcast about podcasts that haven't been made yet. I'm going on. And then I said to Lucy, this is how a relationship works. I was just like, oh, it's like, half improv, half romance. I was like, oh, like that podcast I want to make, the one. And I was like, to see what she would say. And she's like, oh. And so she looks around the room and she's like, oh yeah, your podcast about how to lubricate a bike chain.
Right.
And I'm like, oh yeah, chain reaction.
Right.
And she's a physicist. She's like, yeah, every chain reaction has an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
And she picked that because she was like, what is Matt obsessed by? And
Lubricating things.
Lubricating the chain on a bicycle.
All right.
And so I haven't quite, she wouldn't flesh out the concept any further. So it needs some work. But actually, I don't know if this would be the podcast, but I want to quiz you both now. Do you ride bicycles as adults, or did you ride them as children, or both? Or
Both. I have a bike now.
your bike now, yeah?
Zoom around the city on. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. And how often do you clean and lubricate the chain?
I have never cleaned and lubricated the chain.
There, see? Interesting.
I am not a big cyclist. I would just do it occasionally, and I don't think I've ever lubricated a bicycle chain in my life.
Yeah. And so I never did until I bought like a bike, like a road bike, and suddenly I've got to clean this chain like once a week or every couple of weeks.
Once a week?
Yeah.
Does everyone do that?
I don't. Well, this is why I don't realize what's going on, because I never cleaned or lubricated a chain.
And have you ever had a bike stop because you didn't?
No, it's been fine.
Well, why are you doing
But
it
now I do. Now
Why?
the chain I don't know. The chain gums up, and it will start like catching on the cogs at the back because it's not flexible enough.
Yeah.
What are you lubricating it with?
So I'm wondering if it's a scam. So I buy bike chain lubricant, and I buy two different types.
Yeah.
There's like a summer dry one, and there's like a winter wet one.
Okay.
And the winter wet one is harder to wash off. So it's more resistant to water washing it off the chain, but it attracts the dirt more. So it collects more dirt and gunk around the chain.
Right.
Whereas the summer one collects less dirt, but will be washed off. And you've got to replace it quicker because you'll start to hear it like, not squeak, but the bike equivalent of that. I'm going wrong. And so now I'm constantly, and Lucy finds this hilarious because she's never cleaned or lubricated a bike chain in her life.
Yeah.
And nor had I until I was like, is this a scam by Big Lube?
Big oil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what's your podcast idea? Is it just about lubricating bicycles? Is it Matt lubricates stuff? And you just go different things Matt likes to lubricate?
No, I think each episode we bring someone on who's got a different idea for how we lubricate a bike chain.
Okay.
Wow, that is super specific.
Well, what about if instead of using oil or something, what if you just boiled the entire chain in wax?
Or you know how you get those YouTube channels where like you compress different things or you blow it?
Yeah.
You could lubricate bike chain with different things. And it could be butter, or
butter.
honey, and like you see
olive oil.
Yeah, how does lubricating the chain with this substance affect the performance of my bike?
I'd like to say I did not make that up. Some people will boil their chain in wax.
Oh, really?
Oh.
That's a legitimate way to lubricate your chain.
Wow.
So it sticks to metal, does it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Or olive oil or WD-40. What happens? People get very emotional about WD-40 being put on.
Yeah. But I don't think you're supposed to.
No.
For some reason, that rings a bell
Yeah.
somewhere. It's good for hinges on the
It's
door.
good for displacing water.
Well, there's that YouTube channel, Will It Blend?
yeah.
This is
that's
the-
the
This is like,
original.
will it lubricate?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
will it turn?
Will it lube?
Will it lube?
And each episode, we put a different lubricant on some bike chains.
Yeah.
And the podcast is us riding the bikes until the chains stop.
And we're listening to the bike being ridden? Or, like, is the microphone...
Oh,
are we just
yeah. Should we
turning?
separately mic up the chain?
I guess what Tim's getting at, maybe this is like a better YouTube channel than a podcast. It sounds like the visual element could be important. Like, does this lend itself to an audio-only format? I mean, no doubt this is a fantastic idea and is like going to blow up. But is it going to blow up on video, or audio? Yeah.
Or book form. Is this your
the next book, yeah. Chapter 1, Vegemite.
I do wonder if there is some substance out there that is just waiting to be found as like the hidden mystery substance that no one had thought of. Like you say, Vegemite.
There are lots of counterintuitive things, like, well, if you want to clean your couch, it seems crazy, but baking soda is great, or vinegar.
Exactly, yeah.
Doesn't
Put
that
vinegar
stain?
in the kettle to descale it? Okay.
Or pour wine on it, and doesn't that stain it? Yeah, but it gets rid of the smell or something.
Yeah. Who
Yeah.
would have thought that that was the substance that would lubricate a bike chain? And just so I'm clear, the reason you need to lubricate it is so that it...
Doesn't rust.
Is it to stop it rusting, or is it to so it moves smoothly
Move
around
smoothly.
the sprockets?
Yeah.
Right. But don't you also want the chain to grip the sprockets? Like if it's too slippy, isn't there a chance the chain could slip off things it's supposed to be pulling and
Yeah,
catching?
what you need is the lubricant to be just in the kind of joints from the link to link in the chain.
Yeah.
And then separately, you've got the pointy bits on the cogs going in the gaps in the chain.
Yeah.
So you don't want lube there.
Right.
Although the way the forces are applied, they're very much pulling it onto the cog. So there's not really a force that would cause it to slip off.
Okay.
But what you want is the chain to very freely be able to bend back and forth as it goes around all the cogs.
I'm thinking of special episodes with chainsaws.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a whole spin-off kind of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just one last question then about bike chains before
Yeah.
we move on. I know a problem people have sometimes is they'll be riding a bike and like the chain will come off. It's even happened to me once or twice, and some people know how to put the chains back on and others don't, and you get your hands dirty. It's like a cliche problem. When someone's riding their bike and, oh no, the chain's come off. Oh, what a pain in the neck. What makes the chain come off? What is the normal cause of the chain coming off?
It can be because on a modern bike, you've got multiple gears. And that means you're changing the size of the cog. So your chain is longer than it needs to be because it's got to be able to fit onto the biggest one.
Yeah.
And so you get like a bit at the back to kind of tension it.
Yes.
But depending on how tightly it can tension it, if you're bouncing around, you get the chain slapping all over the place.
Yeah.
And so just that movement in the chain can cause it to flip off.
Right.
You've also got a thing called a derailleur, which is what bumps the chain from one cog to the next. But if you move that too abruptly, or that can knock it off. Particularly if you're gearing all the way down in quick succession, it might overshoot and you knock it off the end. Or it's the issue if you haven't got enough lubricant, the chain gets stiff, which means it no longer curls around to match some of the small cogs at the back. And because it's unable to bend enough, that will cause it to pop off.
All right.
There's a lot going on back there.
There's a lot going. Complicated machines like jet engines.
I like the bicycle because humans, we're good at marathons and long-term exertion. But I don't like running. There's too much impact. But I do like very clever mechanisms and human ingenuity. And for me, the bicycle is the combination of what we've evolved to do physically and what we've evolved to do mentally. It's
I agree.
everything great about humans.
It's the greatest way to move, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's perfectly clean. It's marvelous. It's hugely efficient in terms of energy
You
expended.
can't beat it.
Yeah, bikes are wonderful.
I think the best way for humans to move. This would be another great podcast. Different ways humans move.
Yeah.
I hear you, but I think a way, and this is something I'm not good at, but the few times I've done it and when I've done it well is a great feeling. Is skiing. Skiing down a hill
really?
is a wonderful feeling.
But there's no. It's not. It's totally impractical. It's only you can do one direction.
Yeah, but there's just something about it. There's like this, the geeky, sciencey side is like, oh, gravity's involved. It's always in beautiful surroundings. It always sounds awesome. It always looks awesome. It feels, I think, lovely skiing down a hill. I think that's the ultimate human.
So I
move.
would say, I agree. I haven't done enough skiing to push through the terrifying phase.
Oh, nor have I, to be
into
fair.
the relaxing phase.
Okay.
But I would say the wonderful thing about, not that it's a competition,
Okay.
although maybe that's the podcast. It's
Right.
two modes of transportation. Pogo stick
That's right.
versus jogging, right?
Yeah.
With cycling, one day you can be doing the skiing equivalent. You're rolling down a wonderful hill in the scenic countryside, or you're
True.
in some foreign country. It's incredible. But then the same mode of transportation can get you to the shops and to work and
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
I'm just skiing out for some milk. I'll be back in a minute.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of people from Finland being very upset right now.
Yeah.
They're like, we do practically ski. We cross country ski to work.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on from bicycles.
Chain reaction.
Chain reaction. I like Matt Lube's stuff.
Yeah.
But
Will-it-lube.
Will-it-lube.
Okay, I'm prepared to go with will-it-lube.
Do you have a second idea, Matt? You can't have a better idea than that, but do you have like a reserve idea in case that one...
Okay, on the tiny chance that will-it-lube doesn't get any traction. Lucy's second suggestion was terrible.
Right.
She was like, you should do she doesn't understand the way I relax, because if I'm been doing a lot of work and I'm busy, I will relax by watching like educational YouTube videos or staying up and doing it. She's like, when she wants to relax, she just stops doing everything
Yeah.
and gets an early night. Whereas I'm like, I'm going to watch a 4-hour documentary about historical civilizations or something. Whereas I was like, no, I want to do a podcast called I Ate When That Happens. And the starting point for this is I get very upset when you see the digit 8 put upside down.
Oh,
I ate when that happens.
when that happens.
Based on when does the digit 8 get put upside down?
So it happened more when petrol stations had
oh yes,
to put the digits up.
I agree. That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, the placards. You slide them in,
You slide them in.
and they'll be just off.
And people won't care. They put the 8 upside down.
Because a proper 8, if the two bulbous bits, like the bottom bulbous bit should be bigger.
A little bottom heavy.
the belly rather than the head.
You want the belly
Yeah.
to be at the bottom, yeah.
In most typefaces, I'm sure typography people will have opinions, but 8s, a lot of the time, will have a preferential way up.
Okay.
And I get very upset when people aren't paying close enough attention to put the 8 in the correct way. Now, I suspect that's probably not enough to hang an entire podcast on.
No, but
But I feel like there needs to be a forum for people to air things that bug them that are of no significant consequence whatsoever.
so does the famous bugbear of apostrophes fall under that, or is that too bigger
That
bigger
might
one?
be too important. Like, that's
Right.
mildly practical.
Okay, so it's just things that don't really matter.
It's got to have no consequence whatsoever.
I'll give you one of those.
Yeah.
You tell me if this would qualify for your podcast.
Yep.
If I'm watching a movie or something, or it can even be documentaries if they're misusing footage, but let's say I'm watching a movie and they're depicting Apollo, the
Yep.
moonwalks, which is like one of my great passions. If they get things wrong with that, like obviously I'll be like, no, that's not how it
At
happened.
the wrong speed.
And
Yeah.
one of the ones that happened is on the later Apollo missions. I think it was Apollo 14 onwards. It could be 15, actually, so I could be getting this wrong myself. But on the later Apollo missions, because they were having problems telling the astronauts apart on photos and television, they started putting a red stripe on the spacesuit worn by the commander. So you could tell, okay, that's
the commander.
That's the commander.
Oh, yeah. They got the red
and
stripe.
And that's the other guy. And sometimes you'll watch something and they'll say, oh, this is footage from Apollo 16 or something. And like both the astronauts are wearing white suits. And I'll be like, no, because if that was Apollo 16, one of them would have a red stripe on their suit. I ate when that happens.
There you are. We could call the podcast Redlining.
Red line. Yeah, that's my red line.
Yeah, across the red line.
Yeah,
very good.
yeah.
One of my great joys in life, right, is to be watching something vaguely Brady related, and then to find a fault, something like that. And I know it's a fault because Brady's explained it to me. In other words, something I have no business knowing on my own volition. No business whatsoever, but I can hear Brady's voice saying something and being able to articulate why it was wrong.
Oh, it's nice.
Accidentally learned from proximity to Brady.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm accidentally, yes. I happen to be listening on that occasion.
Have you got an H when it happens, Tim? Is there something that springs to mind yet that, a bugbear? Or...
Oh, look, I have to say, this is something that's on streaming services, so Netflix. There's two things that really annoy me. And one is, when you go to watch something and you can skip the opening. You can skip the opening titles if you want to.
Skip intro.
Skip intro. And then you can skip, I've lost the word
Recap.
for it. Recap, that's right.
Yeah.
I feel like they should be opt-in rather than opt-out. No one wants the recap and no one wants the titles except maybe the first time you watch the first episode. And they should be opt-in from then on.
Right.
So that's one thing.
I watch the titles
What, every time?
every time.
What kind of a psycho...
It's the way that the creators intended it to be viewed. Because also, like reading a book, we're talking about how people read books. I will read a book from the beginning page to the end page.
Right,
Which
yeah.
sounds obvious.
Yeah.
But Lucy, if it's non-fiction, will skip around. She'll look at the contents and go, oh, that's the bit I want to... And this is because her background's in science. And so she's used to like digesting a scientific paper by finding the bit she wants. Whereas I'm like, no, I want to read it the way the person who created it wanted it to be read. And so with I like the texture and pacing of watching the opening titles, where they were put and how they were designed to like represent the vibe of the show.
I get that. I wonder if there are any creators of shows and movies and things that have provided them to Netflix on the stipulation that the skip intro thing doesn't come up. Like they're so precious about their
Or
work.
it's real
that-
small. It changes
like,
corners.
You can't have my TV show if you let people skip the intro like that. Or
I mean, that said, some titles can be too long. So, I get the...
When I come back to a book that I'm halfway through,
Yep.
I refuse to look at the cover. I quickly open it
This
to
is
where
it.
it is.
I'm not reading the title
I'm not doing that again. The other thing I would have to say, and this goes even further, is when you're on the menu, right? So you're just perusing through, oh, well, I watch this or this or this, the sort of choosing something. Whatever's it's lingering on is, starts making noise at me. You know what I mean?
I hate that.
Autoplay.
Yeah.
And I've
I'm with you.
searched online to try and turn that off, and you can't turn it off with Netflix, and it drives me crazy. Yeah. It's like I'm trying to. I will make noise when I get to the thing. I don't want to have Leonardo DiCaprio talking at me while I'm deciding.
I think noise is a right to be earned.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets to blast sound at me. So I mute on the menu.
Yeah, I have to too.
Yeah, you go.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's annoying. It's a whole extra button press.
I ate it.
You ate it. On the books thing, before I come back to more eights possibly, on the book thing, we're talking about consuming books as people intended. So I want to ask you this question, because Tim and I have discussed this before. What's your attitude then when reading books to footnotes on the page and footnotes at the back? Like, so if you're reading and there's a footnote, so you can go to the back and get more info, or it could be at the bottom of the page.
Yep.
Do you read all the footnotes? Do you read them at the end? Do you read them in situ? How do you consume footnotes?
I read the footnote as I'm reading the text.
Even if it's at the back of the book?
Not at the back of the book.
No.
If it's at the back of the book, it's dead to me.
Okay.
I never...
Endnotes, yeah. You don't go
never
and
read endnotes. Only if... Sometimes you read a book and it's so good, you get to the end and there's like a mourning process for having finished this book. And part of what gets me through that sometimes is reading the acknowledgements or flicking through stuff at the back.
Yeah.
And so in those cases, I'll spend a bit of time reading things at the back. But for the most part, I will, at the end of a paragraph, if there was a footnote in that paragraph, I'll finish the paragraph the way it was intended and then read the footnote and then back in where I was.
Okay.
Or I get to the end of the page and go, oh, there's a footnote. I didn't see... Where was the little symbol? And then I'll have to go back and find... It's like a game of Where's Wally?
Yeah, okay.
There it is. And then I'll
Okay.
then I'll read it.
Do you use a lot of footnotes in your books?
I use fewer than I would do naturally, but probably more than I should.
Because you strike me as a guy that would go pretty footnote heavy.
I'm too footnote heavy. I put too many things in brackets. I got too many like embedded clauses because I'd be like, oh, and here's a little aside or an extra thing that's nice to know. So I try. It only ends up in a footnote if I failed to find a way to fold it into the rest of the text. And then I accept defeat. And I'm like, this is still something I think people would like to know, but I can't put it in the main text without breaking the rhythm and momentum of the reading.
Can I take that from books then to films? When you see a film, are you one of those who sits and watches all the credits all the way to the end because that's the way the artist intended?
Not always. Sometimes, though. Like, again, if you get to the end of a good film, I feel like that's like the come down.
And if it's a good song.
It was a good song or something, and these people worked hard on it, but I won't, systematically watch them all.
There's always that pause with comedies to go, oh, we're going to get a little bonus cutaway kind of thing.
There are the
isn't
end
there?
credits things, but yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any other eights, or was it just the eight?
That's it. That's
Just the one.
That's the one. Just the one.
If anyone has any eights that bother them, like leave something on our Reddit or get in touch, and Tim and I might discuss it in a future episode. But
Can I ask you an 8-related question then?
Yeah.
Is
oh, do you see? Wow! Can I ask you a question about numbers?
Oh my goodness!
Have you met Matt Parker?
You want to talk about a number?
well, I do actually. I do because you're a numbers guy, you're a maths guy, and so forth. Do you have a favorite number between 1 and 10, 1 and 9? You know, favorite digit.
Favorite
digit. Oh, that's the different question.
Oh, my favorite digit is probably 2.
Oh, why?
Because I think it's a fun one to draw. Like, it's flowing, but it's got a bit of structure to it. It hasn't got any kind of... No, it depends how you do the 2. I do a little loop when I got to turn around.
All right. You're like a typewriter sort of thing.
I'm like, woo, little... And I think that's kind of fun because it's one continuous thing. Whereas something like a 3, you got to go in, then you got to back out again. And I like the continuousness of the 2.
okay.
I think that's a very pleasing one. It's up there. 5 would be similar, but to do a 5 properly, it's a bit disjoint. Because I used to do my 5s basically like a anti-2. But when I started teaching, students were struggling to tell a 5 from an S because I got a bit... Mathematicians get very lazy with their handwriting. So when I started teaching, re-taught myself how to write a 5 to be like the back and the loop, and then you put the hat on. And it's way more distinct by doing it that way.
I have noticed doing number 5 videos that you do 5s in an unusual way. So.
Yeah, that I taught myself to do that just to make my writing more legible for students.
Tim, do you have a favourite digit?
No, I do like the 2. I always think the 2 looks like a person kneeling.
Oh yeah,
Maybe
I can see
like
that. Yeah,
praying or kneeling. I like the 6, but I think that's because it's related to 16 and a kid that I liked at school who played football who was number 16.
Right. Fair enough.
There's no rules on favorite numbers.
I also like 7 too, which is like, it's related in that numerical thing. There's like 6 is the devil, 7 is heaven, 7 is God. There's something that another thing I should know about, but it's got some sort of significance there. But I like 7.
All right.
7's nice. I mean, everyone loves the number 7. It's very popular.
It's a common favourite number, isn't it? 7. Yeah.
What about you?
It's hard when you go for just a digit. I do like 2 because 2, even though it's just a digit, it's also a bit of a glamour number because it's the only even prime number and things like that. So it's also got like a bit of prestige itself as a number. So,
That's true.
Yeah, I would find it hard to go past 2. 0 if you want to be a bit like contrarian.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, 0 is kind of fun.
Yeah, but and 0 is like new on the block because for a long time there was no 0. So
Exactly.
so
It's
a bit
probably
like
the most recent of all.
yeah. So he's like the new kid on the block.
The newest digit.
Yeah.
All right, we're slipping here, guys, out of unmade space into number file space.
That's true. Speaking of the way we write digits, there are upper and lowercase digits, which I used to do as a joke. Like if I was reading something out, I'd be like, capital 6, which I think is very funny. Until when I was doing my first book, they were like, oh, we want to... Now, they didn't phrase it this way, but they're like, we're going to do the page numbers in lowercase digits. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But so...
Sure, yeah, right.
Your capital digits or your capital letters are always like top to bottom, like they fill the whole
They fill the whole line.
the whole line. And all digits are like that. So actually, in my mind, all our normal digits are capital digits.
Yeah.
But then you get the lowercase ones where they kind of slump down. And you can get 9s, but the downstrokes are descender, like it goes below the line.
Right.
Or so you
But
get,
it's not a subscript.
there's no subscript. And you get 0s, which are half height. And so if you look at the page numbers on some books, and they've used the same ones for all the ones I've written, the numbers in the text are regular digits, uppercase.
Yes.
But the numbers for the page numbers are lowercase. They're a little bit more relaxed, a little jaunty.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go below the line a bit.
Yeah, and they're fine in isolation when they're down there at the bottom of the page. But within the text, they look a bit weird. But they look very at home
Yeah.
as a page number.
I like them when I'm printing out, like a journal or something like that. I like them down the bottom, the page numbers with a little full stop as well.
Oh.
It's interesting. I'm not sure I would like that. A full stop.
It's like the shortest ever sentence.
Okay.
16. End of sentence.
It's nice.
All right, Matt. Final swing at plugging this book.
Oh, yeah.
Love Triangle, The Life-Changing Magic of Trigonometry by Matt Parker. Why should one buy this book?
Oh, I mean, if you already love triangles, you're going to have a great time reading it.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a celebration of all things triangle.
It's a love letter to three-sided polygons.
Exactly. Very much so. And trigonometry. And I do a little bit of Fourier at the end. Because I justify sine waves by looking at then how waves underpin a lot of modern technology.
Okay.
Which I have a lot of fun with.
Yeah.
And if you don't already love triangles, it's about time you got on board
Yep.
and discovered why triangles are so important.
Okay.
And it's a nice, gentle, there's no tests, there's no, problems you got to solve yourself. Obviously, there's some you can if you want. But it's just like a nice, hopefully fun read about why triangles are so incredible.
I haven't read Love Triangle, but I have read your other books, and they have all been not only like clever and interesting, but funny. And if you find Matt like a funny guy, like reading his books is a bit like talking to him. He very much comes through in his books, and I can't recommend reading them enough for that reason alone.
Is it kind of like maths for people that don't know a lot about maths? Like, is this how I would learn a lot, really?
Correct. You don't need any prior knowledge or memory of learning maths at school. You can come in completely zero maths and enjoy the book as much as someone who's... Obviously, if you're a nerd... I'm playing to a home crowd, but if you're not, it's fine. It's been written for everyone to read. Yeah.
That's a good idea for a podcast, actually. Just talking about a different shape.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you go into this or not, if you're fascinated by the way triangles exist in life, in terms of relationships. They talk about triangulation when one person gossips to another person and that person
really?
comes back and gossips about them to that person and that person's excluded. You know what I mean? Like it's like a triangle.
Yeah.
And of course, what we were joking about before, the love triangle about someone who cheats on someone else.
Exactly.
And then
I do like a podcast that like first episode is triangles, the second episode is squares, pentagons.
Pentagons. Yeah.
You could see where they exist in relationships and dynamics and families and
Yeah, I didn't go near I did this a couple of books ago looking at like networks, looking at how relationships and people are linked together. But I did actually I didn't touch on it in Love Triangle, so that would be...
Well, and another great reason to get the book is so you can see these lowercase numbers. That's enough reason for me. And we are going to link to ways to buy the book in the description to this episode. And you should look at that link because this is a chance to get special editions. Matt's got like special editions with different dust covers and signed, and there's all sorts of good stuff. So yeah, you can go and buy it on Amazon and all the usual places, and that's cool.
Oh, it's fine, yeah. It's cheaper that way.
Yeah, but if you want like something a little bit different for just...
If you don't mind paying full price.
If you don't mind paying full price and you want something a bit special and a bit collectible, I would highly recommend that as well. So there'll be links in all the usual places. Go and check it out. This is a really good book to add to your collection. It'd be a really fun read.
Look, in this little triangle here, I'm not the maths guy, right? But I'd like to read it.
You would? There you go.
So there we go.
Wow.
Yes.
So Matt, if we were a triangle, we are a triangle around this table. Like, how would you define the different vertices here? Like who would be the right angle and who would...
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you're right. Who's obtuse? Who's acute?
Acute?
Yeah.
I think Tim's a bit cute.
Tim's a bit cute.
Yeah.
And you know what? If we were a triangle, you'd be the acute angle. So that's...
If I had to sit here and say, Tim, tell us everything you know about triangles, we'd still finish the show on time.
Can you tell us one fact about triangles mathematically?
Could you name a triangle?
Name a triangle. There's an isosceles triangle.
nice.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep, nice.
Bing, 1 point.
I think all the angles in a triangle add up to 90 degrees. Is that right?
Oh, you're very close.
Close.
180.
180, is it?
Yeah.
Right. Of course, because you could have a 90 degrees angle in one of them. It could be 90. Yes.
What's it called if there's a 90-degree angle in your triangle?
Oh, I know this too. It's called a
Triangle.
triangle. A beautiful triangle.
Beautiful triangle.
Right angle triangle.
Oh, no. Well, yeah. I thought it had like a special name.
I feel like you're just...
Like
it feels like you're just
isosceles.
describing
That's a
it,
special
doesn't
name.
it?
That is a special name.
Right angle triangle.
Right angle triangle.
Oh, that's boring.
I know.
Scalene
It's just saying what you see.
triangles.
That's a bit different.
Scalene.
Yeah, that means all the sides are different. Yeah.
Sedimentary triangles.
Sedimentary
triangles.
yes, that's
Yep,
right.
yep.
Prime triangles.
Triangles of prey.